Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everybody to today's RSA US Salon. My name is Claire Byrne. I'm the Senior Community Manager for RSA US. If we haven't met before, hello, greetings, nice to meet you. Nice to have you here with us today. I'm joining you from the Cowichan Valley, located on the traditional lands and unceded territory of the Cooperative people on Vancouver Island, which is lovely and sunny today, which makes me happy. And on behalf of RSA US, I'd like to thank you all for joining us and for today's topic, Discover Your Problem Solving Style. So we have three great speakers with us. This is going to be a super interactive event with a mix of kind of presentation, case studies, breakout groups. So we're really excited to get into it and for today's discussion. We often like to start our virtual gatherings with a prompt to really get folks to share where they're at or get to know each other, build meaningful connections. And so I'm going to ask Tony to pop that question in the chat for me, if that's okay. If there's a problem that you're currently trying to solve, feel free to share whatever you're comfortable sharing, or you can send me a DM if you prefer. It's also fine. For those of you who are new to our events, we do like to give a bit of a short background on the RSA, RSA US, in case you're unfamiliar with who we are, and just some kind of ground rules or expectations about today's event. So founded in the UK, we are the Royal Society for Arts, Manufactures and Commerce, and have been uniting people and ideas to resolve the challenges of our time since 1754. Today, the Society exists as an international fellowship-driven social change organization, and we are committed to a world that is resilient, rebalanced, and regenerative, where everyone can fulfill their potential. Our proven change process, rigorous research, innovative ideas platform, and unique global network of 31,000 changemakers work collectively to enable people, places, and the planet to flourish. And of the 31,000 fellows spread out around the globe, approximately 1,200, sorry, live and work here in the US, including Curtis Friedel, who is here with us today and moderating our delightful discussion. And we exist in the US to coordinate fellowship activities with an aim towards moving the needle on addressing the inequities of our society. So before we jump into introducing our speakers, I want to just cover some round rules for today's event. Tony, if you would put them up on everyone's screen. Have a quick read through these. It would be really good to be familiar with this just as we enter this space together. We're always aspiring to show up in ways that will facilitate inclusive and safe, authentic, collaborative, respectful, and mostly kind spaces. With everything going on in the world, we really value those spaces and how we show up for each other. And to solidify this, listed on the screen, you'll see a couple of different ways that we're committed to showing up with each other. And to just make sure that you're in agreement with it. If you have any questions around that, anything you'd like to add to that, feel free to send me or Tony a DM on the Zooms, and we will respond to you as soon as we can. You can also chat to me directly at any point during today's event. I'm going to stop talking soon, I promise, but I'm going to introduce our wonderful speakers and then we will get into it. So I'll start off by introducing you to Curtis Friedel. Curtis, who is our lovely moderator for today, and I'm going to make sure that he is also spotlit on the screen so you can see him. He is Associate Professor and Co-founder and Director of the Center for Cooperative Problem Solving, CCPS, at Virginia Tech. He maintains a teaching and research appointment with focus placed on adaptation-innovation theory, a problem-solving theory with applications in leadership development, cognitive diversity, team dynamics, and leading organizational change. And serving as the director of CCPS, Dr. Friedel works to continue the teachings and research of adaptation-innovation theory, which was originated by the late Dr. Michael Kirton. Dr. Friedel has also been published in the Journal of Leadership Education, the International Journal of Innovation Management, Thinking Skills and Creativity, and has served as guest editor of the symposium issue for the Journal of Leadership Studies. So welcome, Curtis. Delighted to have you with us today. And I will also introduce Nicola and make sure that with all the acronyms, I don't get tongue-tied with folks. So Nicola Ryall is also fellow of the RSA, is the daughter of the late Dr. Michael Kirton, originator of adaptation-innovation theory and its inventory. She is CEO of the Chi Foundation and is dedicated to ensuring her father's legacy. Nicola was brought up living and breathing Chi and started in Dr. Curtin's office as an assistant at the age of 14, which was during the school holidays, which I'd like to clarify. She has never stopped working and supporting Chi's work since that time. Nicola also works with academics around the world to further research around problem-solving style and its implication in our daily lives, at work, at home, in education, and in well-being. She works closely with the teaching team for quality assurance of all Chi trainings and its usage worldwide. And additionally, she supports the Global Chi Practitioners Network to be active, engaged, and dynamic. And maintenance of good practice in this space, plus the extension of research, are core to the mission of the Chi Foundation. So welcome, Nicola. Super delighted to have you with us today. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Iwan Jenkins is also joining us today and is president of the Riot Point Research, a leadership consultancy addressing the manufacturing, technology, and construction sectors. Iwan has 40 years of techno-commercial experience, 20 years in line management in 4 different countries, and 20 years of specialist strategy and leadership consultancy. A squabble, which I want to know more about, in his business team, and a safety incident on his chemical plant. Oh, where did I go? Sorry, I lost my spot. Um, oh, there we go. Squabble in his business team, which we'll get into, and a safety incident on his chemical plant in the late 1990s catalyzed Ewan's research into how humans collaborate with each other, or not, as the case may be. And this research led to the introduction of Dr. Michael Kirton and prompted a lifelong interest in the practical application of his adaptation-innovation theory. According to Kirton, every human solves problems with a specific problem-solving style. I can't wait to hear more about this. And this style is measurable, stable, and influences behavior. And it can predict someone's behavior if they know their style. So this is also true for every human, regardless of culture. And this is a very powerful insight for individuals, their teammates, and team leaders. And some recipients of this work and who've been involved in this work have described it as like magic. And with that teaser, a lovely way to segue us into a magical conversation. I'm going to pass over to Kurt, who will be moderating our discussion here with Nicola. And thanks for listening to me, everybody. Over to you, Kurt.
Thank you, Claire and Tony, for getting us organized and up to speed. And we're ready for a very delightful conversation. What we're going to do is talk a little bit about what adaptation-innovation theory is. Some practicality will give you a chance to self-assess, and then we're going to open up for some questions. And so let's begin with Nicola. Nicola, could you tell us about adaptation-innovation theory and Michael Kirton?
Thank you very much, Kurt. I'm just going to share my screen. I've got a few slides which might help. Claire has covered an awful lot of ground in the last couple of minutes. I'm very impressed. I find that quite tricky. What I'm hoping to do is to go through slightly slower what she said and perhaps give a little bit more evidence to support some of the wild claims that we apparently are making. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get cracking. So is that all okay? Can everybody see my screen? Okay, fabulous. That's wonderful.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so well, thank you very much for all of the introductions. I would have loved my father to have been here today. He would have been greatly honoured. Sadly, he passed away in 2020 at the grand old age of 94. He worked up until 3 months before he died, and I believe Iwan Jenkins was one of the very last people to have a meeting with him. So I'm afraid you've got second best, which is his daughter. My father was, as Claire pointed out, Michael J. Kirton, DSC. He was greatly honoured by Princess Anne way back when, I can't remember, in the 2010 somewhere, I think. And he dedicated his life to understanding human problem solving and the impact this has on our creativity, decision making, risk taking, and most importantly, our interactions with others. He was particularly interested in how we bring about and cope with change. Every day, we all solve complex problems, from the apparently simple tasks such as shaving to managing quite complex things like relationships with others. Sometimes we need to work collaboratively, perhaps to solve some very complex problems or very large problems, such as how we might improve the human condition, pushing the boundaries of science, or improving the success of our health or education programs. Problem solving is universal, and its importance is especially felt when we work together to bring about change, and in particular, social change. It needs consideration by anyone working in such areas as not-for-profit, industry, government, research. In fact, wherever two people are interacting to work together to solve a problem or to bring about change, then this would be appropriate and will be playing a part in our relationships. So today I'm going to talk about my father's discoveries and how they might help us all to collaborate better. So I'm going to pose a question to you. How much structure do you like in your life? We all have this natural preferred way of doing things or thinking, from how much we like to organize our spaces to how much we solve taxing problems and interact with other people. Some individuals like everything very structured, organized, and just so, whilst others like the world to be free and take a more flexible approach and don't really like rules. Some people find following rules both and routines useful and empowering, and they typically like to be organized and efficient, very precise. They tend to be detailed and meticulous. They're safe and reliable, and they're cautious. And they're cautious with everything that they do. They're perfecters very frequently and certainly improvers. Others want to vary routines at a moment's notice, and they don't like too many constraints. And they're very typically seen as people who challenge the rules. They're fluid, they're very flexible, they think on their feet, they're mold breaking, and they generally can stir things up. However, the majority of us prefer to be in the comfortable middle ground, but somewhere between being highly organized and structured and through to the other extreme of being totally fluid and free of boundaries and rules. Where the balance lies for you individually is your natural preference. We're all on a spectrum from liking high levels of structure on the left to the other end of the scale, preferring very little structure on the right. We call people who like the structure, like more structure, more adaptive, and those who like less structure, more innovative. And as I say, most people like the middle ground, not too hot, not too cold, so might be either mildly innovative or mildly adaptive. This is called the theory of adaptation-innovation, and it was devised by my father in 1975, and it has had the test of time over that whole period and seems to be still going very strong to this day. He also created a method of measuring where you are on the problem-solving style spectrum, the KI assessment, and it's sometimes called the KI inventory. It tells you how much structure you like, how you like to think and organize yourself. It measures your preferred thinking style, if you like. It tells you how you are likely to interact with others, those at work, at college, at home, or within your community. It acknowledges that everybody is creative and that we all solve problems. But how we prefer to be creative and how we solve problems may be very different from our colleagues, friends, and families. It's worth bearing in mind that style is not related to how successful you are as an individual. It's not related to how clever you are. You can be very clever at being highly adaptive, or very clever being highly innovative, or you can be very clever somewhere in the middle. It's not related to that at all. It's not related to how senior you are or how experienced you are. It's not related to where you come from. Different countries don't produce more innovators than other countries. It's not related to your skills or qualifications. And it's not related to, I can't actually see that last one, but hopefully you can read it. I've got too many things on my screen, for which I apologize. Your style is perfect for you. And I think it's really important. And that's great news. Where you are is perfect for you. So every style has equal value. There's no good or bad KI results. Every style has strengths and weaknesses. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there are some advantages in some situations to be highly innovative, and sometimes there are major disadvantages to being innovative. Conversely, there may be advantages or disadvantages to being more adaptive or being in the middle. What's important is that it depends on your circumstance that you find yourself in, which is going to be the most useful, what might be helpful, what might not be helpful. What is also great is you can help people with a different style from you. So my top tips: work to your strengths and real preferences, admit your weaknesses. So if you're somebody who doesn't like following rules, you know, as a person who's like that, that will give you an Achilles heel from time to time. Sometimes it's useful to bend the rules, others it definitely isn't. So with all of these things, there's a plus and a positive to every attribute. Allow people to plug your weaknesses by using their strengths. Show you really appreciate their assistance and value that difference between you. So you ask me, can this be changed? Can my style be changed? Well, let's have a quick look. These kitties and puppies are very, very cute. They've all got different coloured eyes, you will notice. They're still very pretty. And interestingly, your preferred style of working, thinking, problem solving is stable. It's just like your eye colour. It doesn't change. And you can change your appearance of your eyes by putting in contact lenses. Okay. And so you can, if you want to, change your appearance or your behavior, but you can't change your preference. So at any one time, I could pretend to be somewhat different from where my preference is because I need to for some reason, but it isn't how I feel inside. It's not what feels right for me, not on a long-term basis anyway. We all acknowledge that there are times when we need to behave differently from our preference. There may be a moment where somebody who's more innovative needs to be more adaptive. For example, if you're going to jump out of an aeroplane with a parachute, it may not be your natural choice to make sure you've checked everything, but this is a situation where you really, as an innovator, need to make sure that you have followed the safety rules. Equally, adapters may need to be more innovative. Interestingly, typically this is really hard work for us because we're trying to be somebody that we are not. So in order to minimize stress in you and your colleagues, and to maximize the results, it is better to ask people to work in their natural preference most of the time. So coping behavior is what we call this when we are behaving in a way which isn't our natural preference. We all know that there will be a time if you're more innovative where you've got to look at all the detail and get it right, like when filling in your tax return, for example. There's a high penalty for getting it wrong. Equally, somebody who's more adaptive may suddenly need to break out of the rules because the rules are constraining them and they're not allowing them to come up with a solution to an intractable problem, and that they need to get out of a rut or to break the mold in order to come up with a solution. It isn't natural or easy for them, but occasionally it's necessary. So you can change your behavior when you need to, and you can behave in a similar way to your preference, or you could try behaving in a way that's very different or alien to your preference. So it's important to understand that behavior and preference aren't the same thing. We all know that pretending to be something that we are not is hard work. You're putting on an act effectively, or you're trying to do something which is not natural to you. So the longer you have to pretend to be different or to work in a different style, the harder it is. And also the more different you are from what your natural preference would be, the harder it is. And if you try and do both, this is harder still. We are happiest and most productive when we are being true to ourselves and to our preferences. We feel at our best when we are valued for who we actually are. Good teammates and leaders, friends and family respect our preferences and let us be who we are for the best results and for the greatest happiness. Okay, so that concludes a little bit of the theory, and I'll stop sharing my slides now. And I'm going to hand on over to Iwan in a second. I hope you found that interesting. It gives you a little bit of the background and some of the theory, but what's important is the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as we might say. And Iwan has had lots and lots of experience of applying KAI in the real life. And I think he's going to explain why it's a good idea to respect our differences to avoid the occasional fracas. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Iwan Jenkins. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that interesting.
Thank you very much indeed, Nicola. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I want to just maybe give you an example of how KAI, in a rather spooky way, has actually changed my life in a lot of ways. I'm going to tell you how I first became involved with KAI, how therefore I found it useful, and how some of the insight I'd like you to grasp quite quickly, and so that by the time you finish in just over an hour or so, you will be able to apply some of the insight almost immediately. I was a fairly young lad with prospects working for what was then a very large chemical company in the mid-90s. And this could have been, I had an incident, and this could have been the headline that would have been in the local newspaper the following day, were it not for some very good PR by the local site manager. I was running a small business unit that had a business team which had head of production, head of research, head of finance, so on and so forth. And the day before, we'd had a strategy conversation where I was complaining that the team had not really implemented the strategy that we'd all agreed. And then the following morning at 3 a.m., I got a telephone call from the safety manager to say that there'd actually been a safety incident on one of the chlorine plants that I was managing. And all safety incidents had to be reported to the board. And so I was only 7 months into my first senior role, and already I was in front of the board for all of the wrong reasons. And then that was when I had my first conversation with Michael Kirton, and in 60 minutes, he gave me a perspective on what makes human beings tick in such a way that it also not only made sense of the past, but I could also then predict how people are going to work and react under certain conditions. And I'm going to be sharing that with you today. One of the things that we were responsible for was new product growth. And this is the process that we went through. Although it's conventionally written from right to left, we're going to go through it a slightly different way today. When we're introducing a new product, we start off with what the product concept is. They are usually done on paper. It's then put into test tubes for product to develop. It's then tested with certain potential customers, moves on to a pilot plant scale, it goes on to commercial testing, and then out to commercial production. For those of you who work in software, you'll recognize this in terms of Agile and Scrum, and also going on then towards Lean, and eventually to some kind of Six Sigma kind of processing. Because I was deemed to have potential then, I was sent to INSEAD on a 6 months advanced managers course. INSEAD, INSEAD is on the west side of Paris, not far from Versailles. And you go there and you live in a different world for 6 months. But you then start to believe that everything your business school professors teach is right. And one of the things that I was taught was the trend then was ownership of a problem, all the way through from concept to resolution should be then given to one particular person who's motivated to do that. So I came back with this idea And I said to my head of R&D, Rob, we need to grow the business more effectively through new product introduction. I'd like you to be responsible then for all stages of our stage gate process. Fantastic, he says. So now Rob is responsible for product concept, which is his natural homeland, all the way through to commercial production. Now, that always didn't sit easily on Bill Ferguson's shoulders. Bill was the head of production, and there was sometimes the occasional rubbing of Rob and Bill in strategy meetings because they tended to see the world in a slightly different way. But I remembered my INSEAD lectures from my head of organizational behavior, and I said, no, Rob is in charge all the way through. And that's when the problem hit the fan. And so at 3 o'clock that morning, it turns out that this wasn't two line workers who were having a fisticuffs. It turned out that the fisticuffs were actually between Bill, head of production, and Rob, head of R&D, because we were about to ship the final product. It was in full production, and Rob said to Bill, I think I just want to change this again for the fourth time that night, and enough was enough. And dear old Rob punched Bill, dear old Bill punched Rob, and that was it. Safety incident. Okay. So then I was in front of the main board, and then over lunch the next day, thinking this would be the end of my career, I had the conversation with a chap called Steve Glovenkowski then, who is the occupational psychologist, and he said, Ewan, you should call Michael Kirton. This is his kind of stuff. So I called Michael Kirton, and Michael Kirton started off with two simple questions. He said to me, describe Rob. Rob, I said, is brilliant, full of good ideas. And if you don't like that idea and it gets cut down, don't worry, Rob's got a whole new array of ideas coming through. Really knows his stuff, energetic, always wants to do things differently. And Michael Curtin said, well, that's all the good stuff with Rob. Is there any downside with some of the stuff that Rob does? Well, he does irritate his colleagues because we never seem to settle on everything. He doesn't always deliver, but there are enough gems in there for us to cut and polish. But most of the stuff is he has more ore and less gold, shall we say? And he does irritate some of his colleagues then who just want to come to a final decision and get stuff done. Okay. And can you describe Bill to me? Well, I said, Bill is in some ways completely different to Rob, is on the opposite side. Bill always likes to have a bit of detail. He likes to get agreement on things that need to be done, but then once they're done, he just goes out and delivers. Now, Curtin said, well, is there any downside with Bill? Well, sometimes Bill seems a bit dogmatic, doesn't seem to want to change that much stuff, always is looking for what's the lowest risk approach to doing something, even if it's not optimal. Okay. And Ewan, do you think when you go across these different stages of the stage gate process, do you think the nature of the problems change? And that's where the light started to go on for me, because it was clear to me that the skills and the approach to product concept and product development were actually quite different then to commercial production on a dangerous chemical plant. So then I started to describe how I thought the problems change, and then Curtin then introduced me to this concept about there being a spectrum of problem-solving styles, which you'll see on this slide now, between those who are strongly innovative and don't like much structure to ones on the more strongly adaptive side that do like structure. And what struck me then was, if you'll excuse the pun, was that Rob was highly, highly innovative and Bill was highly, highly adaptive. And what I had done was I had encouraged Rob to use a more innovative problem-solving approach on problems that were best suited then to a more adaptive approach. But I didn't have the structure, I didn't have the language, I didn't have the ways of measuring these differences in terms of the nature of the problems, but also then in the nature of the problem solvers themselves. And Kirton gave me that. That's what Kirton did. Kirton allowed me to see that people can actually clash when their styles clash around what's the nature of the problem to be solved. And Kirton labeled this then problem A and problem B. Problem A is the problem that you and I are working with each other, collaborating on to solve. Problem B, though, is the additional problem that now comes through the need to collaborate. How do we manage each other? If we see the world the same way, then problem B is relatively small, and we will then work on problem A. But if our style is different, such as you may be strongly innovative, I may be strongly adaptive, then those differences in approach may be so big that problem B dominates problem A, unless we have awareness as to how we can use those differences for the greatest mutual benefit. So one of the things that I took away from this then was to be aware then as to what's the nature of the problems that need to be solved, and also then which kind of problem solving style goes best with that, and therefore to use people with those styles so that they can solve those problems in the lowest stress. So finally, what did I learn from Kirton that I did not learn from INSEAD? The primary thing is to manage a diverse range of problems, such as product development all the way through to manufacturing. I need access to a diverse range of problem-solving styles. The mildly innovative, the innovative, the mildly innovative, the mildly adaptive, the strongly adaptive. But this diversity is not free. It comes at a cost. And to manage change well, to manage this kind of innovation well, to manage change in an organization, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's software, whether it's social change organization, I must manage this diversity well. I must put as much energy onto problem B to solve it so that it doesn't distract from problem A. That's how I use Kirton's work.
Thank you so much, Iwan. Lots to dig into for sure. And I know that we're going to break into groups shortly. So Tony, you are the mastermind of the Zooms. So I'm going to defer to you to explain to folks here what way we're going to be broken up based on how you see yourself on the scale. So would you mind sharing your screen so folks can see that, and then we'll jump into some discussions with folks here and get to know each other a little bit better around problem solving stuff. No pressure.
Sure, happy to do that.
Yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to share before I did that?
Me
Nope,
or
nope.
Kurt?
Let's go to, oh, sorry.
It's okay.
There's a little delay. Yeah, let's go to that screen, Tony. And what we know from nearly 50 years of working with KAI, and incidentally, the first article of KAI came out in 1976, so we're looking forward to celebrating 50 years of KAI next year. But what we've learned is it has great face validity. So if you understand some of the character traits and you can see them in yourself, you have a fairly good idea of where you are positioned on the KAI continuum, on the left, strongly adaptive, to the right, strongly innovative. And so what we'd like you to do is think about your style, how you prefer to solve problems, more adaptively or more innovatively. And once you've made that assessment, we would like you to join the corresponding room. So room 1 would be strongly adaptive, 2 or 3 mildly adaptive, rooms 4 or 5 mildly innovative, and room 6 strongly innovative. And you can see some of the character traits there. And we're hoping to get in each room 4 or 5 people. And when you get into that room, we want you to introduce yourself and say where you are from. 2, discuss what made you select this room or this group. And 3, discuss how do you see your problem-solving style show up at work and or at home. And so Claire has nicely put that into the chat, and I think we'll also be able to put that into your breakout room. So you are set to begin. Identify a breakout room, and we'll bring you back in about 7 minutes.
Thanks so much, Kurt. We've got instructions on the screen as to how to get to your breakout rooms. They are now open for you. You'll notice there are 6 rooms, even though there are 4 categories. There are 2 that are marked in caps as extra, and that just is where usually there's that natural proclivity for there to be more folks. So we created some of those spaces for folks to be able to go into, but don't worry about that. I'll take care of moving you around. So right now, if you could just go to the icon in the menu that says breakout rooms, click on that, and then select the breakout room that corresponds with your preference based on the scale you can see on the screen.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the chats. We'll broadcast to the group as well your questions, and we'll give you a minute's notice when we're coming back to the main chat as well. We gave you a little, welcome back, everybody. We gave you all a little bit extra time because I know when I'm on events like this, you're just getting into the juicy chats and the breakout room's closed. So hopefully you had good conversations and got to know a little bit more about each other and your problem solving styles. I know that Kurt was going to put some kind of provocation for you all in the chat, so I'll hand over to you, and then we'll jump to questions from the chat, and anybody who wants to come off mic can do that. So over to you, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Just we don't have a lot of time to process what was discussed, but I would encourage you in the chat, if you could, share what was insightful for you in discussing your problem-solving style.
I think everybody is furious.
Did you ask that for a particular person? Did you want us to put it into the chat? Or did you want somebody on
anyone
mute?
could put it into the chat.
Mitch, if you have anything you want.
So I'll say one of the things that came up in our group was that very often you changed your style depending on what was expected of you by the people who were around you, and so we were the kind of the moderate. So most of us, I guess, gravitated to being innovative, but we weren't all the way over on the innovative side. And for our group, a lot of us felt that, we were sometimes with people who were far out in one way or another, and we then were the ones who adapted to be able to fill in on the other side.
That's an interesting observation.
Well, it wasn't mine, but I'm just recapping from the group. But it was cool, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I'll just add on that just quickly with Mitchell's observation that I think it was that ability to the awareness around the need to shift behavior based on the kind of situational things. As people are learning more about this and understanding that there's stability in their actual preference, but as people stay in positions longer, revisit experiences they've had before, build on that, knowledge and expertise, then it makes it more likely and more people are a little bit more aware that they're actually shifting their behavior and not necessarily their style.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Megan. Tony, let's change to questions.
Sure, I can jump in here. I know that we had a couple of questions in the chat, and we're unsurprisingly running out of time because we have lots to talk about. I'm going to call on you, Lindsay. I'm sorry to pick on you, but I know that you popped a question in the chat previously, and I can remind you of what it is if you have forgotten, but if you still remember, feel free to come off mute and share your question. I know you were trying to understand attention and investment for local social groups, so you wanted to share that.
Yeah. So I like the way the question was written, but I don't remember it. So
I have it here. It's okay. It says,
Okay.
I'd like to understand if more attention and investment in local hobby-based social groups will lead to increased social connection nationwide. So any other context you want to put on that, go for it.
Yeah, I work in the social connection space, and it's hard to put the context around this. Recently I've experienced a group of Gen Z community leaders creating their own social networks around their favorite hobbies. And this actually exists across the entire country. And I'm on the board of the Foundation for Social Connection, and I know the stats around social connection generally across the country. And I'm talking about the United States here. The UK actually does a much different and better job at this. Not that the numbers are dramatically better, but they're looking to approach it differently. So my question is, if there's all these kind of local groups and the generation that's willing to lead around hobbies, can we add those all up in order to uplift social connection nationally? And there's a couple different reasons why that's not happening right now, but I'd like to get more people kind of rallied around this idea. Is that what you meant, Claire?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just any further information.
I can speak to that a little bit. It is interesting, when we start building social connections are, an interesting thing to think about. Are we connected or wanting to prefer to work with people who think more like us? And so as that group evolves, those who think very differently than us along the continuum, as we're solving problems together, do they feel stress in that relationship and decided that stress is not worth it for them, and they go on to join a different group? So, we're talking about cognitive diversity here, and how best to bring more people into the group. So, if a group starts becoming more adaptive, more innovative, it could be because of self-selection, which could affect your social networking.
I think we're only scratching the surface. I say this at all of our events because there's always a lot to dig into. And because I want to respect everybody's time, because we all have busy days, I probably don't have the time to call on anyone else for questions right now, but I'm popping them in the chat. I know Mitch and Jessica had some questions previously and during the conversation. So I'll invite you and Nicola, Kurt to answer and pop your comments in there as we kind of wrap up so that at least those are addressed. But also Tony is going to very kindly pop in everybody's LinkedIn profiles. So if you have specific questions and you want to follow up with our speakers today, want to see like learn a little bit more, and you can connect with folks that way. And we invite you to do so. And I know Nicola said she'd be happy to share email addresses if anybody wants to reach out and has specific questions that way. But I wanted to thank our speakers today for sharing their time, their expertise. We all kind of fly by the seat of our pants with the breakout groups. It worked. It's fun. And thanks for your patience with that. But it was wonderful to dig into problem solving, which feels like a timely topic right now. For those of you who registered via Eventbrite for this event, you will get an email from probably me later today or first thing tomorrow with some of the links that have been shared throughout the chat, and a recording of the conversation as well. And if you are a fellow, there is space on Circle, our community platform, to continue this conversation, and I'll share that with folks there as well. And if you have any questions, you can reach our general.us@thersa.org email address for myself or Tony. And you'll get a playback email soon, and we'll be on the socials, we'll be hitting everything. So have a wonderful rest of your day, whether it be morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I hope that you can bring some of this learning into your life in some way, shape, or form. And that we see you at a future event soon. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all. And hopefully we see you at another event soon. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves.